Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video, which is about Material 3 text fields this time. So we will talk about the two different types of material text fields we have in Material 3, and you will learn how you can and how you should style them in a user-friendly way. So the goal should always be that your users intuitively know what to do with a given UI component. And that is what you learn in this playlist. And these are the two text fields we will build in this little video. You can see it's to enter a weight. And you can already notice the differences between these text fields. On the one hand, we have normal Material 3 text fields, which have this filled background here. If we focus these, and then we can enter a number here. And on the other hand, we have these outline text fields, which look like this. The behavior of these text fields and the options to style them is exactly the same. So there is no real UX rule which decides for you which text field you should pick. It's rather a decision based on how you want your app to look like, but I would not mix these two types of text fields, at least on one screen, but typically also not in your app. I personally like these outline text fields more and would rather stick to those, but that's of course just my personal opinion, and these here are just as fine. So to get started, I'm here in an empty Jetpack Compose Material 3 project, and just a few adjustments in our Gradle file before we can get started. If we take a look here, on the one hand, make sure you're using this Compose version 1.4.5 or later, and something you need to adjust, at least if you watch this video pretty soon after I upload it. You can see that the Material 3 dependency for Compose does not specify a specific version, and I think at the moment it uses 1.0.0, but there is one component of these text fields which I want to show you which is not included in that version yet. So we want to explicitly specify the version, which is currently 1.1.1, and that is the latest stable version. And I also added this material icons extended dependency, which is optional for this video, but because I want to show such a scale icon, that is only included in this extended icon set. So if you want to follow this exactly the same, then also make sure to include this dependency. To make Compose 1.4.5 work, you also need to go to your build.gradle product file and change your Kotlin version to 1.8.20. Then you can hit sync now, and we can get started with the video. So here in our root content, we want to put in a column where we'll just place our two text fields, the normal one and the outline one. Modifier is modifier filmmax size. And let's just center our text fields on the one hand vertically and horizontally, like this. And then we can get started creating our text fields. The normal text field can just be created with this text field composable. So you'll see here is a text field composable, there is an outline text field composable, and a basic text field composable. This basic text field composable is not Material 3 specific. That is just the very blank, empty text field, which you can completely style to your needs. So it's basically just a transparent container where the user can enter text, but you can of course style this transparent container to not be transparent, to have a shape, to have an outline, and these kinds of things. So I won't get into that, but we will focus on this text field and the outline text field. And something you can also already see is, if we take a look on the parameters here of this outline text field, and then check the parameters of this normal text field, they're exactly the same. So I don't need to explain everything twice here. If you have a certain styling for a text field, you can apply this exactly in the same way for the other type of text field. So there is nothing the outline text field can do which the normal text field can't. No, both have the same functionality. They just look a little bit differently. Okay, let's get started with this normal text field composable. And you also notice that there are two of these normal text field composables. The only difference is that this one takes a string as the state, so as the actual text, and this one takes a text field value. With this text field value, you have a little bit more options, but typically you don't need them. So these options can include that you can, for example, already set a selection for that text field's value initially. And you can also pass annotated strings, so you can make parts of the value bold, italic, and just format these values a little bit more. So if you need that, use this text field value overload, and if not, we are fine with the string overload. We have two mandatory parameters. On the one hand, the value and onValue change. Those are just used to display the text and update the text when the user types something. So we can just do that with a normal compose state, filled text by remember. And in here, we can create our immutable state of an empty string. So initially, we don't have any text. And for some reason, we can't import this remember here. So we need to go up if you have the same problem and duplicate this remember line twice. Change this to set value and this to get value. So those are the two imports we need. And then you can see the error is gone. can then put this on a separate line. And the value will now just be our fill text. So whenever this changes, the value of the text field will change. And on value change needs to be a lambda in which we update our fill text with it. So it is just the new text after the user typed the character. So then we just update our state. And since the state then gets updated, this will also update the value of our text field. And since we have a lot of different ways to, change this text field and expand it with more useful extra UI components, I would say we just go through these step by step. On the one hand, yes, enabled. This is just like for buttons. You can enable or disable that the user can enter new characters. Read-only is used if the user should only be able to read text from the text field, so if there shouldn't be any interaction in any case. The difference to enabled, however, is that if it's read-only, the user can still select and copy text, but they can't add new characters to that text. Well, if it's disabled, so enabled being equal to false, then the user can't do any of that. Then we have the text style. So if you want to change the text appearance of the entered text, the text style is what you need to use. And you can see by default that is equal to local text style.current. And if you change this, or you maybe only want to change one specific value of that text style, I would always make a copy of that. So local text style.current, and then we say copy, and we just change what we want to change, because then it will just keep all the remaining text attributes that are already encoded into this local text style. So if we, for example, want to change the text align to right, then I would do it like this and not create a new text style here. So this would of course also work, but then the font might be smaller than typically for text fields, since you create a completely new text style with the default font size for text styles, which might not be the default font size for text fields. So that is why I would just use this local text style.current. And if we launch this, maybe to just take a little look, then at the moment this just looks like an empty box where we can enter something. You can see now the text align is right, so the text is right bound. Doesn't really look like something user-friendly because the user would not know what to do with this little box here. So let's change that a little bit more. I want to minimize that, and we will take a look what else we can change here. Next up, we have the label, and that needs to be a composable. So typically that is just a text, which is a label for this text field. So it tells the user what the user can do with that text field. In this case, since we want to build a text field where the user can enter their weight, we could, for example, have enter your weight as a label. And if we launch this, then I'm pretty sure you know these labels for material text fields. You can see by default, it's just content that shows on the text field, so you can see this. If you click on it, then this will move up and still remain. So it's not like a placeholder, which would only show if there is no content in the text field, but rather something that is always shown. So this won't go away, but rather it gets a little bit smaller when the text field is focused. But if we have a label, we also have a placeholder, which I've just mentioned. So we can also have a placeholder composable, minimize this, which we can also copy the text for, paste this here. And the placeholder should really be short and crisp. This shouldn't be too long and maybe just be cut off at the end of this text field. So I would just put in weight here, for example. And to see the difference between the placeholder and the label, we can launch this. You can see that the label is shown by default. And if we then click into it, then the placeholder is shown as long as the text field is empty. If we then type something in this text field, you can see the placeholder goes away. If we don't have a label, but we do have a placeholder, then I'm pretty sure the placeholder gets shown by default. So yes, then it's the same behavior as a label, just that this placeholder won't move up here if we type something. So you can combine a label and placeholder, but you can also only use one of these. I personally like to just use placeholders and not these labels, but it really depends on what you want to do with that text field and what looks good. Let's take a look what else we can do with such a text field. We can create a leading icon. So we can have both leading and trailing icons for these material text fields, which is pretty cool. So in here, we can just create an icon. The image vector would be something like icons.outlined dot, I think it's called monitor weight. And the content description could just be something like weight. And then we already have a leading icon for our text field. If we take a look here, then you can see here's our scale, and we can still enter something in our text field. So that's pretty cool and easy. You can also use real images here if that fits, as long as the image has a height of 2060p. So the example Google used in their guidelines is just to have a little Visa image or something for credit cards to indicate, hey, this text field is for entering your credit card details. But typically, I would say you're fine with these material design icons. Cool. If we have a leading icon, we obviously also have a trailing icon. We can just copy paste this for that. So leading icon and make this a trailing icon. We can change this to something else. I don't know, person, just to show you that this works. I will remove it afterwards. If we take a look, then now we also have this person icon at the end. And this will, of course, also consider the padding so that the text won't overlap the icon. This can, by the way, also be a clickable icon button. So, for example, a little close icon. If you click the icon, then you will clear the text. That is a common use case. Or a little check mark maybe. But I will remove this trailing icon here because it should be pretty clear in which cases you should use that. The next thing is prefix and suffix. And those are two lambdas which we only have with the later Material 3 version. These are actually the two lambdas why I explicitly mentioned the 1.1.1 version. The prefix is just a text that appears before the text the user enters. So, for example, a currency. This could be US dollars. And if we then enter something in dollars, then we will see this right here. So, of course, this now looks ugly because we have a right-aligned text. This should, of course, be left-aligned here, but then we could enter some kind of number and dollar amount, and it would look very nice. In our case, we don't want a prefix, though, because we enter a number, and after that, we expect a unit, which in this case could be kilograms. So we want to use the suffix instead. If we use the suffix and change this to kilogram, then it suddenly starts to make sense, and then you also notice why I made this text right-aligned, because now we can enter a number and the suffix will appear right behind that. So very cool. Let's take a look what else we can do. So we have our prefix, we have the supporting text. That is very important. Supporting text, which is also lambda. And the supporting text is in the end just a little info text that shows below the text field. And this can be used for two main use cases. On the one hand, if you just want to give a little bit information or description about what the text field is used for. So for example, if you want to indicate this is a required field, which you probably know from these form text fields, then the supporting text will display below the text field if we take a look, just like this. But another use case the supporting text is also used for is if there is an error in your text field. So maybe your user enters something like 300,000 kilograms here for their weight, which absolutely can't be the case. So you would want to display some kind of error here that the user please enters their real weight. And then you can also change the supporting text to an error message. So for example, please choose a real weight or so. And that together with is error being equal to true, you make that an error text field. If we take a look, then the supporting text suddenly gets red to indicate there is an error. And also this line at the bottom also gets red, and the background of this also indicates more that there is a real error. So obviously you would need to make this dependent of some kind of state so that it's not statically showing an error like it is doing here. But if you need to show an error below a text field, then definitely use the supporting text. And don't use a supporting text and an error below as a separate text. That would be considered bad UX. So rather replace the supporting text with the error text, which this text field is already doing by default. So that way we also already covered the next field, which is error. So if there is an error, you set this to true, if not to false. And let's also change back the supporting text to required. Cool. What else do we have? If we take a look here, we have visual transformations. This is something I won't go into detail here, but for example, if you have a password text field, you could set this to a password visual transformation so that the characters aren't really displayed as they are. Let's actually do this just to show you. We could set this to a password visual transformation. And then if we launch this, that is effectively how we make a password text field. So if we enter something here, we don't see what we type. So visual transformation basically just transforms a real character just visually to another character, but it doesn't change the actual content of the text field, so the actual value. So let's leave that out because we're not building a password text field here, but rather take a look at the next parameter, and that is keyboard options. That is something that you need quite often and which most people actually don't consider, which gets really frustrating for the user. Keyboard options specifies what kind of text field that's actually. So we can create a keyboard options object here. On the one hand, you can set things like capitalization. So if the first character should be capitalized, not relevant for us here since we're building a text field where we can only enter numbers, or where the user should only be able to enter numbers. Autocorrect is also something we don't need, but the keyboard type is what we need, because here we can say which characters should display on the keyboard. And since we're building a text field where the user enters a weight, we should only allow the user to enter weights. And for that, we pretty much need keyboard type that decimal. So if we want to type decimal numbers, that is what we should use. If you use email, then the keyboard will use a layout optimized for entering emails. So for example, the @ symbol will appear directly on the keyboard and the user does not need to click on some special character options or so. You have phone, so if the user wants to enter some phone number, text is the default. ASCII, I'm not sure what that is, but password, number password, URI, and these kinds of things. We want to use decimal here for our weights. And something we can also make use of is IME action. That is what shows up on your keyboard in the bottom right. So where you typically hit enter or save or something like that. And you can determine what should show up there. So we can set this to IME action next, for example. So if the action after entering something in this text field should be to skip to something or to just go to the next page or so, maybe focus the next text field on that page, then we can choose IME action next. There's also go, which I think is the check mark to maybe save something. There is search. So if you have a search text field, you should use this. Then there will be this little search icon so the user knows when I hit this, then I want to search. And yeah, let's choose IME action next. And how can we now respond to this when the user hits next on the keyboard? Well, if there are keyboard options, there are also keyboard actions, which we can set to this. And here we have a callback, a lambda callback for all of these different actions. And since we have our IME action set to next, we want to use on next here. So this will be called when the user hits next. We can just print hello world here. So you will see that this works. But in a real app, you could, for example, either switch the next page or focus the next text field, for example. And do we have more, which I could show you here? We have a threading icon. We talked about prefix, visual transformation, single line. So if your text field only has one line and you want to enforce that, you can set single line to true. Max lines is if you have some specific line count. So if you only want this text field to expand over 3 lines, use a value for max lines. Minimum lines is also if you want to show more lines from the beginning on, you can increase this. Interaction source, again, something advanced, which I also didn't cover for buttons, so I also won't do this here. The shape, something I wouldn't change since the default shape already considers all the guidelines from the Material3 library, and the same for these colors. So if you're using a proper Material3 design theme, then the normal text fields will already choose the exact right colors for your text field in both light and dark theme. So those are really all the values that we can change for a text field. And if we now also want to see the outlined one, as I said, we can just copy paste this, maybe put a little bit of spacing in between, spacer, modifier width, not a width actually, modifier height, 32 dp for example, Alt Enter to import dp, and then we paste this below. We can then also take this state, copy that, paste it below, above this, and this time we have our outline text, and we can change this to an outlined text field like this. If we now launch this, we will see both text fields. You can see there's no error, and we can use both in exactly the same way. You can see this is how we change the keyboard layout. This is now optimized for entering decimal numbers, and this arrow here indicates this next action. So if we click this, then we should also see in our logcat that hello world should pop up somewhere. If we search for hello world, yes, there it is, because we created this callback for our IME action next. So I hope you now feel like a master when it comes to Material 3 text fields. If you now want to dive even deeper into Jetpack Compose and learn about mistakes you should definitely not do, then check the link in this video's description because I got a free PDF for you in which I summarize the 20 most common mistakes or 20 deadliest mistakes you can do with Jetpack Compose. You can download it for free, just need to enter your email and then you can learn with that. Thanks for watching. In the next video we will talk about selectable UI components, so checkboxes, radio buttons and switches, so definitely don't miss that one. I wish you an amazing rest of your week. See you back in the next video. Bye bye.